Hello, you're welcome to another interesting class on social studies. My name is Vanessa Hart. The topic for today's class is dangers of drug trafficking, and the theme for this topic is social and health issues. By the end of this lesson, you should be able to state the meaning of drug trafficking. You should also be able to identify the reasons for drug trafficking. And lastly, you should be able to describe the consequences of drug trafficking. When a person is ill, some medications are prescribed by a doctor or pharmacist, which when taken, helps the person to return to a healthy state. Apart from these drugs, there are other harmful drugs that can pose a danger to its consumer. These drugs are produced and sold by some persons who are called drug traffickers. Now let's go on to what drug trafficking is. Before we move on to what drug trafficking is, there are two terms that must be defined for us to have a clearer understanding on the definition of drug trafficking. These terms are drug and trafficking. What is a drug? A drug is a chemical substance which, when taken by any living organism, produces an effect. Trafficking is the act of selling or trading items that are considered illegal or unlawful. Drug trafficking is the act of selling harmful drugs which are considered to be unlawful. Examples of these drugs are heroin, marijuana, cocaine, etc. Now let's go on to look at the reasons why people engage in drug trafficking. There are so many reasons why some people engage in drug trafficking, but for this class we'll be looking at just a few. Number one, we have unemployment or joblessness, poverty, bad company, greed, and finally, ignorance. Let's look at these reasons in detail. Unemployment or joblessness. When a person is jobless and unemployed, he or she is likely to engage in drug trafficking. Next, we will look at poverty. Poverty is a condition where a person is not able to provide for his or her basic needs. These basic needs include clothing, food, and shelter. This can pressure a person to engage in certain vices such as drug trafficking. Let's go on to look at bad company. Bad company. Like the saying goes, evil communication corrupts good manners. When a person has friends who are drug traffickers, there is a tendency that that person would also become a drug trafficker. Now let's go on to look at greed. Certain people who are not content with what they have and desire to get more, get themselves involved in drug trafficking. Lastly, we are going to look at another reason for drug trafficking, which is ignorance. Ignorance refers to a lack of knowledge. Some people are unaware of the consequences and the grave dangers of involving in drug trafficking. We are going to go on to look at the consequences of drug trafficking. The National Drug Law Enforcement Agency, NDLEA, is a body set up by the federal government of Nigeria to eliminate the growing, processing, manufacturing, selling, exporting, and trafficking of hard drugs. They are usually found in international airports, seaports, and border crossings to prevent the import and export of hard drugs. Note that drug trafficking is a serious offense in Nigeria that attracts severe punishments. Drug trafficking has adverse effects on its victims. Some of these effects include death, bad image for the country, mental illness, and other criminal activities. Now we're going to look at these consequences in detail. Death. When people take these harmful drugs in excess or are caught with them, they often try to swallow them. This leads to death. Other times, they are caught and sentenced to death. Now we're going to go on to look at bad image for the country. If a person is caught in another country trafficking drugs, he or she tarnishes the image of his or her home country. Now let's move on to the next consequence, which is mental illness. The effect of these drugs on its victims is that it affects the mental state of its victims, causing them to behave or act abnormally. Now let's move on to the last consequence of drug trafficking, which is other criminal activities. Furthermore, the effects of these drugs on its victims encourages them to engage in certain criminal activities such as kidnapping, assassination, etc. We have now come to the end of this class, but before we go, let's take a quick summary on what we have learned so far. We learned that a drug is a chemical substance which, when taken by any living organism, produces an effect. We also learned that trafficking is the act of selling or trading items that are considered unlawful or against the law. Furthermore, we learned that drug trafficking is the act of selling harmful drugs considered to be unlawful. Examples of these drugs are heroin, cocaine, marijuana, etc. Going forward, we learned that the National Drug Law Enforcement Agency, NDLEA, is a body set up to eliminate the growing, processing, manufacturing, selling, exporting, and trafficking of hard drugs. Also, we learned that some reasons why people get involved in drug trafficking are unemployment or joblessness, poverty, and bad company. Finally, we looked at the consequences of drug trafficking, which include death, bad image for the country, and mental illness. Now let's move on to our test session. Question 1. Dash is the act of selling harmful drugs considered to be unlawful. A. Assassinating. B. Trafficking. Or C. Drug trafficking. The correct answer is C. Drug trafficking. Question 2. All but one is not a reason for drug trafficking. A. Employment. B. Poverty. C. Bad company. The correct answer is A. Employment. This will be all for now. I'm sure by now you know what drug trafficking is and the consequences of drug trafficking. Thank you for watching. Bye-bye.
If you enjoyed this video, hit the like button, drop a comment, and subscribe to our channel. You can also turn on notifications to stay updated on new videos on this channel. This Brain Friend video was brought to you by Sinforest. For more of these amazing e-learning videos, get your copy of Brain Friend. With more than 1,000 e-learning videos, over 74,000 test items in more than 40 subjects, a career counseling guide, and many other amazing features, BrainFriend remains your foremost e-learning and exam preparatory software. BrainFriend. Learn better, make excellent grades.